Welcome, everyone. I'm Lily. I'm the founder and CEO of Auggie. I'm so excited to be with you here today. If you're expecting, congratulations. I'm right there with you, 22 weeks pregnant, so I may be out of breath. This is such an incredible time in your life, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this journey with you. But let's be real for a moment. Pregnancy can also feel overwhelming at times, or even if you're expecting in different ways. That's overwhelming for different reasons. There are endless decisions to make, a million things to Google, and sometimes you don't even know what you don't know. So that's exactly why we're here today. We'll break things down and give you the tools, the knowledge, the confidence you need to navigate this journey. We'll help you understand what to expect at each stage. And I put like expect in quotes because you never know. So I'm so excited to be here with some of the most amazing experts in the industry. I am definitely not one of them. So I will pass it off to everyone here to be able to make their intros, and I'll just go from left to right on my screen. So Leah, you are first. Hi, Leah.
Hi, I'm Leah Trebus. I'm a registered nurse and lactation consultant, and I work for the Lactation Network. And at TLN, we're the largest provider of insurance-covered lactation care in the country. And we're able to see families where they want to be seen, whether that's in-home, in an office space, or via telehealth.
Great. Love that. And Krista, you are next. Hi.
Hi, I'm Krista. I am the founder and CEO of Nunona. I have a bachelor's in dietetics, and in a previous life, used to lead global marketing and innovations for a major infant formula brand. And I live in New York City. I'm a mom of two. My youngest is going to turn 2 in a few days now. So starting to feel like my brain is coming back and like feeling normal again, which is a good feeling. It takes me about 2 years. And at Nunona, we are redefining what perinatal nutrition looks like with real food supplements to support mom and baby for this time period called the first 1,000 days from conception until when the baby is 2. Our award-winning product is the world's most comprehensive pre- and postnatal supplement. It can completely replace synthetic pills and lactation aids for postpartum. Our product is organic. It gives you 12 servings of fruit and vegetables in these tiny little bites. Really easy to eat and delicious because nutrition shouldn't make you nauseous.
Amazing. And you do not need to take those horse pills. So that is nice. Hi, Casey.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. I am a certified nurse midwife. I'm also a mom to 3 kids, including, fun fact, a set of identical twins. If any multiple expecting parents out there. And I'm also the senior director of patient programs at ULA, which is a space where we are striving to deliver better maternity care through an accessible midwifery-led collaborative care model that combines the best of obstetrics and midwifery and centers our patients in everything that we do to really uplift our patients' voice, autonomy, both before pregnancy in the preconception space, during prenatal care, through your birth, including postpartum, which, as we know, is the rest of our lives. So I'm sure we'll be getting into that today, but happy to be here.
Well, we're so happy to have you, and I can attest to ULA. It's amazing. I'm delivering with ULA this time around, and I wish I did it last time. So I'm so excited to
Oh,
have
that
you.
is wonderful.
Simone, hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simone Tate. I'm the founder and CEO of Poppy Seed Health. I am currently a mom to a lot of plants.
Mhm.
And and in my path, however, to become a parent to a real little human, it's been very complicated. And in doing that, I founded Poppy Seed Health specifically to make sure that we are able to be one text away for anyone that needs emotional and mental health support, with our network of national advocates who are comprised of nurses, doulas, and midwives, so that you can be in a conversation 24/7, 365 in just seconds with someone one-on-one, whether you want to talk about your feelings or get any sort of, tips or support or information, evidence-based information as you go through your journey. And that's with pregnancy, postpartum, and loss support.
That's awesome. And we're so excited for what's ahead for you. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, everybody. So my name's Ashley. I'm the founder of Birth Smarter. I am currently in Salt Lake City, but I'm moving back to my home state of New York very soon, and I'm very excited with my two kids who are like Casey, just like super old and not babies anymore. My kids are 8 and almost 11. And Birth Smarter actually almost predates my experience. I am a birth and postpartum doula, a lactation counselor, and a childbirth educator, but found through my experiences that the mainstream model of childbirth education often leaves parents really riddled with fear or overwhelm, or sets you up to expect a certain outcome, to use that word. There's a lot of toxic positivity and false promises. And Birth Smarter is the very first organization that is scaling in-person and online childbirth education classes nationally. And we are the OB-GYN and midwife approved. We're known for being incredibly partner-centered. And all of our classes have alternative pricing models because we are trying to get everybody better pre and postnatal experiences through childbirth ed.
That's amazing. I was just on the phone with a friend recommending your services because she's like, I can't even envision myself in labor, and I have so much fear around it. One of the first major decisions in pregnancy or while you're expecting is choosing where and whom you will receive care from. I've had this, right? Like the decision can shape the entire pregnancy experience. Like I mentioned earlier, I chose ULA this time around, and I wish I did the first time for my specific reasons. So how can people approach this important choice? And Casey, I'm gonna kick it off with you.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot to think about and a lot to learn, and a lot that you don't know yet about your point of view and kind of your core values about what your vision is for the type of care you want to receive. I think, there's a lot of misconceptions out there about this. So two sort of answers. One is about like the type of provider that you want to see for your pregnancy care and birth. And the other is really about like the location of where you want to give birth.
Yeah.
And both will really impact kind of your decision-making path. I think just as a midwife, it's really important to understand that midwives are licensed independent clinical providers with an advanced health degree. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about midwifery, that midwives only work in home birth and only work, outside of health systems or aren't nationally accredited, but actually 98% of midwives work in hospital settings. And I think there's this sort of binary when you're thinking about choices in the maternity space of like, I'm either choosing this out of hospital experience that's very low risk and, unmedicated and uncomplicated, or I'm choosing a high risk OB pathway where everything is super medicalized. And actually what we're trying to do at ULA is really break down that binary, and that you actually could have the best of both and have the care that you need from the expert that you need at the time you need it, right? And so that's where I think collaborative care is really a beautiful way of thinking about bringing that holistic experience to kind of more birthing people. So those are kind of two areas that I like to think about when framing that conversation with folks.
I like to say ULA is what happens when you mix like hospitality with hospital. Yeah, and I didn't know that midwives are essentially doctors, but not, or are doctors, right, but not surgeons.
Right. They're like you can think of it as kind of like an advanced nurse practitioner in a way, specializing in holistic care. We're really experts in driving preventative health, holistic care models. Normal physiologic labor and birth is really our sort of like focus and expertise, but we're also experts at identifying complex health conditions that come up either that you carry with us as complicated humans going into the pregnancy space, right? All of our lived experience comes with us into pregnancy, right? For better and worse, right? And also things that arise during the pregnancy experience. And, midwives are really skilled at identifying those complexities and then figuring out how to pull in the experts. So we are not surgeons, right? OBs are experts in the pathology, the illness aspects, complex medical conditions, and surgical care, all of which is critical to have as a safety net. But majority of people go through without needing that.
Yep. That is awesome. And I guess, Krista, for you, with your background, tell us a little bit how nutrition and just overall holistic care can support every type of birth setting that Casey was just talking about.
Okay, so through the nutritional lens, it doesn't matter like where you choose to give birth, your nutritional status can play a really foundational role in your experience and in your outcomes. So with nutrition, you're helping with everything from baby's brain development to literally reducing pregnancy complications, right? Like preeclampsia or anemia. Nutrition is very powerful during this time of life. I say nutrition always matters, but it literally matters the most in this window period called the first 1,000 days, which is from conception until the baby is 2. It's a field of science called nutritional programming, and you're building those cells for the rest of their life. But even for maternal nutrition, you're able to actually get ahead of pregnancy complications with the right nutrition. So that's where it comes in. And we really advocate for a very holistic approach, along the lines of ULA, which is why our product is only real food and organic as opposed to synthetic supplements, which are really hard to absorb and not as safe as working with organic real food. And then what's really unique about our product is with synthetic pills, you're getting kind of like these isolated nutrients that, hopefully you're able to assimilate and digest. But we deliver it with the food. So you're actually getting your macronutrients as well. You're stabilizing your blood sugar that can help prevent gestational diabetes, for example, and so on. So yeah, nutrition is incredibly powerful, but especially during this time. And it's about making sure that you're getting the nutrients that mom and baby need to thrive, regardless of the setting.
Got it. I need to work on that.
But
Leah.
it doesn't have to be scary or complicated, right? I think, we end up overcomplicating it. And that's really something that we want to break down. It doesn't have to be overly complex or scary. It can be really easy and really accessible. And I think what I'm passionate about is really connecting the science with solutions so that people can implement it. Right? Because if you have the right nutrition during this period of time, you're helping prevent pregnancy complications and you're helping to program your baby as well as possible. And in order to do that, you need to be able to absorb your supplement.
Yeah. Leah, we've talked about this in the past, you and I, because I had oversupply my first time around and I didn't really even know what that meant. And I think that you explained so well the importance of lactation care even before you have a baby. So will you talk to us a little bit about how people should address and consider postpartum care like lactation support when choosing a provider, and when is it too early to get is it too early ever to get this support?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think your individual learning. And so often I recommend the last trimester as a good time to schedule your first lactation visit. Really, it's up to you though. If you're the type of person that's like, I want bite-sized pieces of information, do a couple prenatals. But I think you can start looking when you're looking for other providers. So you find out that you've conceived and you're interested, you're finding your OB doc and you're doing that. And once you have that care established, which is important to establish early, then you can start thinking about your pediatrician, your lactation consultant, your physical therapist if you want to utilize one, your mental health care providers. And so I think when you start thinking about that, you want to think about a lactation consultant the way you would any other provider. So where do you want to be seen? Do you want to be seen in your home? Does that sound ideal? You don't have to, bundle up the baby in the winter to take baby out, or if you have other kids at home, it's easier sometimes to have that home visit. Do you prefer to be seen in an office, or maybe you want to try telehealth? So, you can pick a provider based on who is accessible to you, based on how you want to be seen as kind of a starting point. And then a lot of lactation consultants do have websites where you can sort of dig into like, what is this person about? Kind of like, what is their philosophy of feeding? What are their
That's their vibe.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. Am I going to vibe with this person? But I think it's also, fine to ask questions, right? So like to do a bit of an interview before scheduling your one-on-one. You're going to get the information you need about this provider in your initial prenatal, but I think if you want to do due diligence earlier on and just, say, hey, I think this is how I want to feed, or I think this is the journey that I want. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you're going to help me reach that goal? I'm always willing to talk to families, so that I can make sure that we're the right provider. This is intimate care, right? So you want to have a provider that you feel super comfortable with, and to Lily's point, that you get good vibes from. And then I also suggest seeing if, when you're interviewing pediatricians, if they have any providers that seem to be a little bit more breastfeeding. All pediatricians are breastfeeding friendly, but certainly when I've worked in offices with pediatricians, some are even more so like interested in breastfeeding and like super supportive of it, and will work really closely with your community lactation consultant. So that's something to consider as well when you're picking your pediatrician.
I never thought about that. That's really good advice. Um, I can only talk about my personal experience when I'm in a prenatal visit, but I kind of like go mute and don't ask any questions. So I don't recommend that strategy. So when you go to your prenatal visits, Casey and Simone and Ashley, I promise I'm coming your way, but like what actually happens? What should parents be prepared to ask and discuss at each stage? Or is it okay to be a mute and just to let the practice guide you?
Well, I think it's really important to have kind of a twofold approach to it. You want to kind of zoom out on pregnancy and understand that it's like almost an entire year of your life, right? There's a lot that's going to change and evolve that you don't know. And just knowing that and be able to kind of zoom out and sort of like chunk out your thinking in terms of prioritizing your experience by trimester, for example, right? Like your
Yeah.
needs and focus in the first trimester are really, really different than what's coming up for you in the third trimester, right? And so, we at ULA, we really like to kind of start the visit with just checking in with how are you and what's coming up for you today. And I think for those of the experts on the panel today in the postpartum space, like, I mean, 24 hours, things change and that, in the postpartum space, and it's not that dissimilar in pregnancy, like how you're doing and what's really coming up for you. So, we kind of try to have an anticipatory guidance of like, here's like the key decisions you're going to need to make in each trimester. And here's some like, we offer up some, educational guidance around like, here's some questions to ask yourself as you kind of think about these things. Here's what's going to come next visit, right? So you can kind of start to prep a little bit in that way, but then really just arriving as you are in that space and understanding things are going to keep changing and evolving. So in the first trimester, you might be really focused on genetics testing, for example, and really just getting through that vulnerability of that ambiguity of, am I really pregnant? Is this, whether this was planned or unplanned, like, is this really happening? I'm on this path, sort of like craving that stability, right? Second trimester, I mean, Lily, you're the expert on that. But it's sometimes you get a little bit of ability to exhale a little bit and kind of live your life just a little bit. So lean into that if that opportunity comes for you. And then in the third trimester, it's all about thinking about your birth experience, signing up with Ashley for your preparation classes to really get ready for the experience, and specifically beyond, right? I think that postpartum piece is the piece during your pregnancy that you really need to start thinking about, asking about, and planning for before you're arriving there. So
Yeah. I love that advice. The fourth trimester. I didn't even know what that was until I was in it. Just quickly, Ashley, for Birth Smarter, if this is people's second or third baby and they're considering a VBAC after a C-section, that's personally what I'm considering. Do you have classes for that, or are they more generalized?
If somebody's considering a VBAC, they should come back in and take our 1-day class or the full series, because the reality is that the way we teach folks having their first baby is to set them up to hopefully prevent the primary cesarean. And so we're going to go over the same material for somebody planning for a VBAC.
Yeah.
And there are ways, to like condense it down, but really going through the breadth of the information is super helpful, I would say. Yeah.
And talk to us a little about pushing and what people can do to learn how to push. Because I think a lot of people expect that pushing happens naturally, but is that the case, or should you practice pre-labor?
Okay, great. So let's do a whole nother webinar on this and give me the hour, but in a very consolidated way. If your body is like following the physiological birth process, you don't need to do anything in order to push. Your uterus, the top of your uterus, the fundus pushes your baby out. And learning to allow that to happen and trust that process is really important. Where we can step in is preparing the pelvic floor to get out of the way without injury or damage or trauma. And the beauty of doing pelvic floor preparation prenatally is that it sets you up for postpartum recovery. And it sets you up to have like a really sort of functional, pleasurable, strong, stable, supple life as somebody who's going to be carrying heavy things, running, chasing scooters, and eventually going through menopause. So pelvic floor preparation, I think, is essential for everybody, but I wouldn't do it to prepare to push. I would do it as like, this is something to invest in for your lifelong health.
Got it. I after every session that I'm on with Leah, when we talk about pelvic floor therapy, I'm like, after this, I'm going to book an appointment. But after this, I'm actually going to book an appointment because I didn't my first time around. Okay, the 4th trimester. Simone, talk to us a little bit about mental health and preparing for this stage after the baby arrives. And when do you recommend people potentially seeking out treatment, even if they're expecting? Because, and one, you don't have to suffer, right? And somebody is agreeing they love pelvic floor therapy. I definitely was showing signs that I wasn't acting like myself while I was expecting my first, and I thought it was quote unquote normal. And I probably could have intervened in a way if or I wish I had intervened in a way. And now I'm on Zoloft and I'm not going off of it. And my pregnancy has been much different. So I guess talk to us just when poppy seed health should come into play and how people can set themselves up for success for the 4th trimester.
Well, Lily, I love that you are using this language that the majority of birthing folks use, which is I probably should have, which is typically followed by I didn't know if
Yeah.
if they've had prior children or if they've been pregnant before. But I'd like to take a step back and then get into postpartum, because that postpartum period of your life, which to Casey's point is forever. At Poppy Seed Health, very specifically, we are focused on the person and the unit, right? If you're partnered or whatever your community, your support system is, we are really focusing on the person who is carrying the person, the vehicle of which, right? You have to be sure that you feel supported, healthy. And I often say this, the system is completely rigged to make sure that the baby is fine, right? Yeah. And so no one is really paying attention in the ways that we should be, which is why all of us are building, companies and really committed with what we're all innovating and building with around patient-centric support system. A couple of staggering stats that I didn't know even before starting Poppy, but the one compelling one that most people don't understand and don't know is that it is actually mental health related issues and concerns is the number one reason for postpartum death in our country. Number one reason. You can ask any OB-GYN or midwife, they will tell you it's the number one reason. But there's an extension to that, and that is that the CDC, which we all very much respect and need that data coming out, the CDC reports that it is the only 100% preventable thing that we can actually commit to solving for there not to be deaths. So I don't know about you all or anyone who's joined us here today, if there was something that you knew that you could solve that causes pain and suffering and adversity as such as death, which seems very dramatic, but knowing that it's the first thing, it should 100% be on our minds and hearts and action plans to make sure that every single birthing person, every single person on their reproductive healthcare journey has access. Now, part of having access is that we just don't have enough people, right? We don't have enough therapists. We don't have enough psychiatrists. We just don't have enough on the provider and medical side for the demand. And by the way, most people have no idea if they're flagging for anything along the way that could be mental health related in a negative way.
Yeah.
The last big thing that I want to, point out here so we can all continue to have this conversation is that just remember, pregnancy and pregnancy specifically and the process of the body going through is just a physiological event in your life. You are going to be that same and also different person, right? But hormonally, you're going to change, and that is through pregnancy and also postpartum. And so at Poppy Seed Health, we say, look, we're the frontliners on feelings, because the moment we're able to connect with you on your feelings and also nausea, your feelings, and also that concerning spotting that might have happened right after having sex, your nausea, and also the like salsa-like discharge that's happening in postpartum, right? Feelings are our foundation at Poppy. And when we start there, we're able to truly support people with their doulas, midwives, and nurses at scale without doing no medical diagnosis, prognosis. We just become one of your most trusted partners on your journey, wherever you're going. And I think that's incredibly important, obviously, not just postpartum, but especially at 3 a.m. in the morning when you need someone by your side, when the baby isn't latching, when you're in between visits at ULA, right? When you're thinking like, can I have this sushi or not? Whatever it actually is. It's really important for us to be a part of your care team. And so mental health is the whole thing. And I'm biased to that, right? But emotional and mental wellness is the whole thing and is foundational. Hey, kiddo.
Yeah,
I like your hat.
we have a visitor. Okay, that is very, very helpful. Yeah, I was having not normal thoughts. If you find yourself in a position to be having those, definitely reach out to somebody, because being asked at the pediatrician to circle a smiley face, a medium face, or a sad face is not the only way to get in touch with what you're dealing with. Now, Ashley, for you, for this fourth, trimester, how can you set your partner up for success to help with the mental load when they physically can't do some of the things that the birthing parent can do?
Yeah, I mean, breastfeeding aside, right? Partners can do everything except, be the person whose pads have to get changed. But I think at Birth Smarter, we really, really know that the success of the family dynamic and the family system comes from what you set up in these early days, because the habits just set in. And there are societal things that we need to address around like evenness and equality in parental leave that would allow partners the space to step in. But until we have sort of public solutions, the private way that we can address this is by making conversations about sort of the invisible work work and the mental load really explicit. So I trained as a fair play facilitator with Eve Rodsky and the Fair Play team. So folks should look that up in 2021. And we've been incorporating principles of equal partnership into all of our classes since then. I mean, it predated that. That's why we joined the training. But so we have a full postpartum planning class where we incorporate this. And then we also have just dedicated fair play classes for parents, for folks who can come in once they already have kids, right? For Casey and I with our elementary school aged kids, where we're still like, oh no, I have an uneven amount of how we manage this household in my mind. But I think for partners, what they need to know, and the quickest example I can give you is around diaper changing, right? It's like not any, we used to celebrate partners who were excited to step in and change diapers because how great, right? That's really different than a generation ago. But actually, when you think about the mental load of diaper changing, you're touching household finances, right? Like how much are we spending? Are we getting the luxury brand? Are we looking for savings? Are we coupon clipping? You're touching home organization. Where are the diapers getting stored? Who's making space for that? When does the new shipment come in? And where do the extras go? You're touching the daily grind, right? Like who's packing the diaper bags? You're tracking health and wellness. So whoever's changing the diaper should be monitoring those bowel movements and saying, hey, something looks off, or what's going on from this diaper rash perspective, or do we have to call the pediatrician? Diaper changing extends up until potty training. Who's doing that research, right? And so really what we want to do is to teach expectant parents and their partners and the extended caregivers, grandparents, siblings, postpartum doulas, to not just be doing the tasks that need to get done, but really asking whoever that primary thinker is to share the load with them, write these things down, put them in an app like Coexist or Maple or Notion or Asana to use like a work-based app, right? Write them in a shared note on your phone, get a big legal pad, and start from the very beginning, right? Which for everybody on this call is like, today is day 0. Just start writing it all down so your partner knows what's in your mind, because maternal gatekeeping and this feeling of martyrdom, and I get my value from doing it all, leads to a path of incredible inequity and resentment down the road.
Yeah, that I could not agree with more. And Jackson was saying yes the whole time you were speaking, so I think it resonated with him too. Leah, what can people do to prepare themselves from the 4th trimester in terms of like, I know you don't always love to do product recommendations, but like when can you get the pump? And when can you like start thinking about when to get all of the supplies that you should have at home?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think, the more we talk about breastfeeding and make it a community thing, I think the less isolating it is. So I love people talking to friends and saying, hey, I talked to my friend, they use this. Oftentimes in my prenatal, someone already has like all this breastfeeding paraphernalia. So they have like pads and storage bags, and they're like, my friend gave me this. What is this? Like they're holding things up. And so I love to go over all those products with families and sort of just say like, ooh, this will be great. What we do is we match up a parent's back to work plan, their goals for feeding, and all of those things with the appropriate products. So if you're going to be an exclusively pumping mom, I'm going to recommend something totally different for you than I would recommend for a mom that really doesn't have to pump and give bottles, right? So we're going to use a very different approach based on your unique needs. And so what's great about that prenatal visit is we want the partners there. We want to talk about what your plans are for postpartum, the 4th trimester, what both people and product supports you need to get you through that time. And that's going to change over the course of postpartum too. So like early postpartum is going to look different than 4 months down the line, it's going to look different when you introduce solids and all those pieces. And so certainly there's like a myriad of things that I call them tools to put in your tool chest. And I like parents to have those both like mental notes, but as well as product. So we talk all about that. And then with your partner, we really like to talk about what they're nervous about as in regards to breastfeeding. Because what happens is at 3 a.m., to Simone's point, when the baby's not latching and you're kind of, you become at odds with where you need to be coming together. You can almost become at odds with one another. If we've talked about those things, we've talked about like, well, what's the plan C? We know what plan A and B are. What's plan C? It's much easier then to get through those like hard times and have a plan that makes you feel like you're not betraying each other
Yeah.
in that. And so I think that's super important just for managing expectations. Because that's another huge part of this, right? Is like what we want in our heads in the prenatal period looks very different. And I think Lily, probably you experience that. Like you think it's going to be one way, social media tells you it's going to be one way, your friends might tell you it's one way, and then when you're in it and you're experiencing it, it just becomes this totally different reality. And so, having that team of people around you to support you so that you're not just left to like be at you and your partner like trying to figure it out alone is so important.
Yeah, I love that. And definitely you hit the nail on the head. That was my experience. Krista, what should we be eating in this 4th trimester?
Yeah, I love this question. This is actually the reason why Nunona exists. So, I have a background
Great.
in dietetics. Food is my life. We moved from abroad back to the States. I think I was 7 months pregnant. So, and then
Wow.
like hurried up and did everything. And I didn't think about my nutrition for postpartum. Like I just like to eat healthy. I like to cook. Like I thought it'd be a breeze. And it was an absolute nightmare. I was starving. Because
Starving.
was so obsessed with making sure, is she okay? Is she breathing? Is there something around her face? When did I feed her? That you end up sacrificing your own health and wellness, right? And you don't even know that it's happening. And I realized, okay, this is not okay because I was breastfeeding. And if you're breastfeeding, a lot of people don't know this. And I think it's fascinating. The quality or the profile of your breast milk is literally dependent on your diet, on like what micronutrients are in your bloodstream, right? So all over the world, the macronutrients, the carbs, fat, and protein of your breast milk will pretty much be identical, regardless of diet. But the micronutrients that actually make it up can be highly variable based on whether or not you have them in your body. So I said, okay, like this is not okay because I need to make sure I'm eating well so that I'm feeding her well. And that's literally like the moment I invented these bites so that I'm getting the macronutrients. And then over time, we figured out how to get all of the micronutrients in that you need at 100% roughly of your daily value. So that when you're pregnant, you need anywhere 200-300 extra calories a day, kind of like trimesters 2 and 3. When you're postpartum, if you're breastfeeding, you need upwards of 500 extra calories a day. So people talk about breastfeeding hunger, like it's almost
Real.
insatiable. It
Yeah.
is so real. So the fact that, we give women synthetic pills and call it nutrition or a lactation cookie and think that that's helpful really infuriates me. You need good quality nutrients for your own postpartum recovery and for that of your child as well. But it's almost impossible to get it when you're caring after the baby. So we fill that gap with this product where you get 10% of your daily macronutrients, 100% of your daily value for 27 micronutrients. And then of course you should be eating as close to nature as possible, but this is all annoying stuff to hear when you're in the 4th trimester.
You just want French fries.
In terms of whole foods and everything else. So my goal is just to make it super simple and easy and accessible. And then just tying back to what Simone was saying, that I think is incredibly fascinating with nutrition is that consuming 200 milligrams of omega-3 postpartum and during pregnancy, but postpartum can help actually prevent postnatal depression. You're not necessarily gonna, omega-3 your way out of postnatal depression. It's not 100%, but if you
That would be easier.
no, if you have really good nutritional foundations, it affects your hormones, it can affect your mental health, right? So nutrition, of course, is important for your own health and for the baby, but it touches on your mental health as well, which I think is incredibly powerful, which is why, and it was very hard to do, we include 200 milligrams of omega-3 in our energy balls. Because I want to make sure that any woman who needs it is getting, the amount that she needs for her own mental health and to make sure that it's getting into her breast milk as well.
Can I tag on to that, Lily?
Please.
Krista, where were you living abroad before you came back?
South Africa.
Awesome. I didn't know what or where you were going to say, but anywhere outside of the United States as it relates to nutrition is better than the
Yeah.
postpartum nutrition. I don't even want to call it a plan, but the postpartum nutrition influence that we have in the US. And what I wanted to tack on there is y'all, this is not at Poppy Seed Health, pregnancy and postpartum our top 3 categories that people are constantly talking to us about. We're talking about, we're 4 years in the market this year. We're talking about north of 1 million minutes of chat time of people coming on average and chatting with us for 37 to 40 minutes every single session, all via text. And the 3 top things are sex related questions, postpartum, specifically in postpartum, it is lactation, right? And feeding questions, not surprising. And the third is nutrition.
Mm.
I'm a full spectrum doula, and those 3 categories carry over, not surprisingly. And all 3 of those categories actually, it is the birthing person, the woman who is asking those questions for herself and her own mental health. It is all connected, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things I did want to say about nutrition, because I feel like there is such a tremendous amount of pressure to be doing nutrition perfectly because it is so connected to lactation and it is so connected to sleep and those things. And it is by far one of the things that I think more than even, mental health support and what that looks like in the US, but it is actually nutrition that I think we are failing birthing folks with the absolute most. If you look outside of this country, South Africa being one of them, but we're talking about ancient, right? Centuries and centuries old of nutrition that actually is connected to both lactation and also healing and wellness for that person who's just given birth that we just don't have here in the US.
Yeah.
And so you also see it culturally that the aunties, the families, the next door neighbors, everyone is showing up with whatever that good nutrition is because they also know that's what you need. From
Yeah.
India and Ayurveda to China and your 90 days of being inside with your people who are only focused on your own healing. And all, if not most of it, is really based in the nutritional value postpartum as it relates to your healing from the inside out and also lactation. We could do such a better job. So thank you, Krista. But I was itching to ask, where were you before?
Yeah.
Because South Africa and everywhere else except for the US has a pretty solid cultural identity when it comes to supporting new moms.
Yeah. I know.
I was,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
guess building on that, I was just absolutely shocked, having lived in South Africa for 10 years, moving back to the States, thinking like I'm going to be able to access all of these amazing nutritional products, and then just feeling this massive void. And as somebody where nutrition is my life, and having worked in infant nutrition and doing that at a global level, I was like, it's like I'm going back in time when I came to the States. I'm like, this is ridiculous. We have this knowledge. Why are we the only postnatal nutrition products on the market at scale are lactation cookies? Like, how are we taking processed cookies and sugar and selling that to women, and as if it's like postnatal nutrition or helpful, with a blend of galactoglogs, which aren't even evidence-based to have any impact on breast milk production. The only thing you can do with breast milk production to influence that's clinically proven is, the frequency of feeding or expression, right? But that doesn't mean that nutrition doesn't matter. It matters so much for your ability to produce breast milk, your postnatal recovery, your mental health, the profile of your breast milk. But none of the products on the market actually line up to that. And then just the fear during pregnancy of eating correctly. Is this safe to eat? Is this not safe to eat? I know as a dietitian, if you're taking a synthetic supplement, it's not very well absorbed. So I'm like, we have all of this knowledge. How are we not translating that into product solutions for women? It's a
Well,
very vulnerable time It's a time when nutrition matters a lot, but it should feel supportive, not stressful,
Yeah.
right? And everything feels stressful instead of supportive. So, along with, all these amazing founders on the call, we're working to solve that. Like our generation is actively working to solve that. And that's great because the next generation will have much better solutions.
Yeah, this baby's kicking like crazy right now, so I feel like he's agreeing with everything that you all are saying. And I just want to send appreciation to the work that you are doing because it is so important. Because, like Simone said, there's not enough people doing this. Somebody just wrote in, postpartum is no joke. I definitely wish I had more education about postpartum for my first baby, and I couldn't agree more. Even with all of the support. I mean, I have an amazing partner. My mom's a psychologist. Over the years, I've had my own psychologist. Like, even with those resources, I got rocked in a way that I couldn't even expect. And that's from a mental capacity. But then there were so many other things that I wish I prepared for. One of which was having an appointment with Leah pre having this first baby. Okay, I want to make sure we get to people's questions. The chat has been uh, no questions are coming through, just a lot of people relating to what we're saying. But if anybody has a question, feel free to turn off your mic or write it in, and we will get to it. And I just want to make sure we're hearing you if there's anything that you think that we haven't gotten to. Simone brought up something that I think is an interesting topic, which is like sex while you're expecting. And I'm curious, like, what are those
Let's
questions?
get into it.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I like the thought of being touched right now is the opposite of anything that I want. So I can definitely talk about that. And I'm curious Ashley's perspective because it must come up all of the time in these classes.
Uh-huh. And Casey too. I mean,
Oh yeah,
literally, right? This is like, yeah. Well, if we have no questions about sex, I'm happy to just dive into
Yeah,
sex.
dive into
You
it.
know,
I have my question.
All right. Well, I always like to level set with some facts and data because
Yep.
it makes us feel like less alone. Like, was I the only one that was spotting or this happened or whatever? One of the most important things to remember is something that Casey brought up very early on in our conversation: planned and unplanned pregnancies. So in the US, 50% of all pregnancies that could be your first or your fifth are unplanned. It is socioeconomically agnostic. So it
Yep.
doesn't matter what that looks like. And furthermore, this is why it's very, very important for people to be able to have bodily autonomy and really make their own choices. But 50% of pregnancies in the US are unplanned. So if you imagine not planning to get pregnant, but also not necessarily having a good like pulse on what your cycle is or expecting whenever your menstruation and period's supposed to start, etc., you're usually finding out that you're pregnant. Obviously after a missed pregnancy, probably not so obviously for women.
Missed period.
Yeah, like more than 30% of women just are not, menstruating people are not on a cycle that is so predictive. And so you're finding out that you're pregnant and you go, oh boy, what to do next, right? And one of the things that we think early on as it relates to sex related questions, but very specifically spotting, right? So spotting is one of those things where we say, okay, it's implantation bleeding, but it could be other things, but usually it's a early sign of pregnancy. But you can also first trimester spotting and sex related questions come up more than I can even tell you on this this call, as the
I'm not
entry
surprised.
point for pregnant people to even pick up like their phone or pick up whatever and ask a question about their pregnancy and well-being at all. And so it allows us to be able to support them in normalizing things that are normal, right? And sex is one of those things. So sure, we start talking about spotting and we immediately get into it, you know, walking, sex, really, whatever it is, when we pinpoint that it's the sex, it also allows us the opportunities to support that person through all of the questions about sex, believe it or not, that they just don't have the answers to, like they never learned, right? And so we enjoy the sex related questions because it's the number one gateway for us to be able to really establish that trust and care without it feeling like they're one, doing anything wrong, and two, answering these other questions that they've been dying to ask, like lightning crotch questions, right? Like, is it true that having sex, you know, in my third term, if I'm, you know, overdue for my expected due date, the answer is yes, we know it's true, right? Like there are things that you can do with just starting to talk about sex related questions that are gateways, but we go into it all.
Right. Casey, what questions do you hear coming up the most in your appointments about sex?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's definitely, there's very few clinical scenarios where it's like sort of like unequivocally, like we're saying, like the medical advice is to avoid penetrative intercourse. Things like, you know, that you might have heard of, like placenta previa, or if your water bag has broken, released the amniotic fluid, things like that. But what I find is there's a lot of pressure in society for us to, necessarily want to have that like type of intimacy, right? And so I actually see someone raising that question as an opportunity for me as a clinician to have more curiosity about like what the source of their questioning is. Because I think, you know, when we think about like the postpartum visit, it's sort of like synonymous with like two things in American culture: having penetrative sex again and headed back to work, right? Check, right? And it's like, we know as like, you know, holistic providers in this space that it's actually like, no, it's everything else, right? This is truly a transformational life event that is defined psychologically as a crisis, right? As Simone's been talking about, all the different areas of our lives are impacted, right? Financial, relational, identity, intimacy is one, right? But there's a lot of different ways to foster intimacy that aren't necessarily penetrative intercourse. So I like to answer with curiosity to kind of understand what's coming up for you in this space, and kind of explore it in that way. And then we kind of lead to a space of acceptance or exploration or curiosity with the patient about like what could be possible in that space, thinking of it more expansively, that it could be cuddling, or it could be, you know, orgasm, right? And there's like ways that this is all intertwined. And we talk about orgasm certainly at the end of pregnancy. And I know Ashley talks a lot about this in your classes, like, you know, about like that is integrated into part of our anatomy and physiology as what, you know, might have brought your baby here and what, you know, might help bring your baby out. Like these things are related on a biological level. So
Ashley, that is true. Oh, thank you, Casey. That's really helpful. But Ashley, talk to us about orgasms in the third trimester.
I mean, I think what's really important for people to understand is that oxytocin is the hormone. It's our love, trust, bonding, connection hormone. And so oxytocin is the hormone that's responsible for uterine contractions in labor. Oxytocin is released when we feel a sense of trust and safety, right? So if you want to back your way into designing a birth plan, you can just ask two questions, which is, what will increase my feelings of trust and safety, and what will increase my freedom of movement? And then whatever provider and location allows for that is what you want to do. Leading up to labor, you know, if sex and orgasm are going to encourage feelings of trust and safety and release these positive hormones, that's going to be a really great thing that encourages, you know, that hormonal feedback loop to start. Postpartum, right? I don't think anybody is orgasming in the first week, but holding your baby skin to skin and having the high that comes from that is going to release oxytocin. And then oxytocin causes uterine contractions that allow the uterus to shrink back to size, which is really critical for postpartum healing, right? And so really, like, not only are they all biologically connected, but they're all connected by a deep sense of trust, safety, and being intimately connected with another human being. So this is all very relational.
That is really interesting information that I did not know. So it's just an example of like, even if you're expecting or pregnant, there's still more for you to learn and to be curious about. I am so appreciative that you took the time out of your day, ladies, to be on this call. Leah, Krista, Casey, Simone, Ashley, thank you so much. I'm going to announce the giveaway winner. It's Tara DeWitt. So we will be in touch about your Birth Smarter credit, and then we will reach out to everybody to collect addresses so you can get Nunona products. They're amazing. And then you will also get a DM in the Auggie app with resources or more information on resources on how you can reach all of these amazing companies. And somebody just asked if we could also share just more prenatal resources. So we will. And thank you and congratulations to everyone on this call who is expecting. All right, have a good day, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.